Have you ever thought that just one laugh, unintentional bursting out in a suffocating moment, could blow away all the relationships you have worked so hard to build for more than 20 years? Just that seemingly harmless sound could turn you into an evil stepmother. The one who is considered the #1 enemy on the most important day of a stepchild? If you think that is impossible, then maybe my story will make you reconsider. I am not a dramatic person. I live quite quietly, gently, and choose to love rather than confront. But life is not always as simple as we want. And love, no matter how deep and sincere, is not always recognized. Especially when that love comes from someone, not your biological mother. Let me take you back in time. Back more than 20 years ago, I entered the life of a widower with 2 young children. A skeptical 5-year-old boy and a 3-year-old who couldn't understand what was happening. I was young, full of hope and desire to build a happy family. I did not hesitate to embrace his past, quietly entering the lives of children who were not blood relatives, but had long since become children in my heart. I became their mother not by name, but by every meal, every sleep, every knee injury, every night terror. I was there for every stage of their growth, from their first time in first grade, to their first parent-teacher conference, to their first heartbreak or scholarship. I did not ask to be called mother, nor did I force any recognition. I just wanted to love and be loved in return. But it seems for some people sacrifice is never enough. Adam, the eldest stepchild, was the person I thought I knew best. He was quiet, introverted, and almost never called me mom during his childhood. But I accepted that. I knew that trust cannot be forced. I waited. And while waiting, I loved him endlessly. Once when Adam was about 10 years old, he was bullied at school. He stood at the door, his whole body bruised, his eyes trembling and hurt. I didn't ask why. I just opened my arms and hugged him. That was the first time Adam took the initiative to lean his head on my shoulder. It was also the first time I believed that a part of his heart, no matter how small, had a place for me. However, people's hearts are unpredictable. And in the most unexpected moment you will realize, there are cracks that have always existed silently, just waiting for a sound. A laugh, for example, to burst into a deep chasm that separates us forever. Have you ever been to a family party where everything was going warm and happy, when suddenly a cold sentence fell like a knife? Have you ever been excluded in front of all your relatives without warning? And have you ever stood amid skeptical eyes, suddenly feeling like you were an extra in the family you helped build? I have experienced all of that. On a seemingly normal birthday evening when the whole family was gathering to celebrate my husband's new age, when everyone was laughing and talking about the upcoming wedding of Adam, the son I had raised with all my heart, my ears were blocked by a sentence that seemed so light. My name is not invited. This is a wedding for family and a few close friends only. At that moment I heard nothing else. All sound seemed to stop. My heartbeat slowed, my mind went blank. I looked at my husband. He was also frozen. And our 3 children were gaping, shocked and in disbelief. A statement. A denial. A complete exclusion from their son's big day. As I was not his mother. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't make a fuss. I just laughed. A laugh that broke out, more bitter and sour than any tears. Maybe because all the emotions inside me were so suffocated, that only laughter was enough to escape. But that was also when everything began to collapse. That laugh, just for a brief second, became a verdict. I was called a destructive stepmother. I was asked to apologize for laughing. I was blamed for causing the family to disrupt. But who pulled the knife first? Have you ever wondered what makes a mother? Is it blood? Or is it presence, unconditional care, and undemanding love? If you have ever loved a child that you did not give birth to, you know the pain of having that love completely denied. It is like you have spent your whole life building a house and then one day you are kicked out of it, without warning, without a good enough reason. I used to believe that if you love long enough, deeply enough, the truth will be recognized. But love, sometimes, is just a one-sided misunderstanding. And the price to pay for that misunderstanding is misunderstood laughter, uninvited weddings, divided families, hearts broken in silence. In this story, you will see the gray areas of a seemingly happy family. You will witness how children react to injustice. You will understand how a mother, who did not bear the burden of childbirth, can be the center of a storm in the very home she sacrificed everything to preserve. And then, you will ask yourself, who really ruined the wedding? When people enter a second marriage, they not only marry a person but also the past, the memories, and especially the children. I met my husband 2 decades ago. At that time, he was a man who had gone through a broken marriage with 2 young children who needed support. I was not afraid of challenges. I knew that if I loved him, I would also have to learn to love what he brought with him. Adam was only 5 years old at that time. Ben had just turned 3. The children did not understand the breakup, but were old enough to feel the emptiness of a broken family. I used to think, they have a mother, I just need to be a kind adult by their side. But time, love, and months of taking care of them, picking them up, cooking, comforting them, gradually made me no longer see them as stepchildren. They were my children, at least in my heart. Later, we had 3 more children together. Charles, a smart and gentle boy, David, an introverted but thoughtful child, and Ellie, the youngest daughter who always made the whole family laugh because of her innocent and cute personality. Our small house was filled with laughter, dinners with all 7 people, family vacations, happy gatherings, and even arguments between siblings. Even though I am a stepmother, I have never set limits in my heart. I do not differentiate between biological children and stepchildren. Every child in the house is hugged and kissed goodnight, is taken care of when sick, and has a gift on his birthday. Adam, the 5-year-old boy when I first entered the world, is now a grown man, has a stable job, and is preparing to be a husband. And I, the person who held Adam's hand through many exam seasons, picked him up and dropped him off at basketball practice, and sat up all night just to talk to him when he had his first heartbreak, was not considered part of the family when he got married. But the story doesn't end there. That day was my husband's birthday party, Adam's father. We were all together. 5 children, future daughter-in-law Alice, and a cozy dinner table that I had prepared all afternoon. We laughed, ate, and of course the topic of Adam's wedding was indispensable. Everyone was excited, because it was not only Adam's big day but also the joy of the whole family. When Ellie, our youngest daughter, 13 years old, excitedly shared her plan to go dress shopping, I smiled. She said she couldn't wait to go dress shopping with me, the stepmother she always called Mom. I had also planned to buy a beautiful dress to appear with my husband and children, like any other mother on a big day. But, right after that, a look from Alice, Adam's fiancée, poured straight into me like a bucket of cold water. "You don't need to worry about your dress," she said, glancing at Adam. "We just need a dress for Ellie. My name isn't coming." Thought it was a joke. Some kind of misunderstanding. Ellie did too. She laughed, innocently asking, "You're not coming? So you're wearing a suit?" And then Alice replied coldly, almost harshly, "My name isn't invited. The guest list is just close family and close friends." The whole table fell silent. The sounds of cutlery, laughter, and chatter had all but disappeared, as if someone had pressed the mute button on the entire room. Charles, my 20-year-old son with my husband, spoke first, asking, "What do you mean? You were never invited? Or are you just uninvited now?" Alice remained eerily calm. She was never invited. Adam, the child I had held for so many years, nodded, and said simply as if he were talking about a stranger, "Because you are not my mother." At that moment something inside me broke. Not anger. Not dissatisfaction. But an indescribable pain. It was a betrayal from the child I had thought was my son, from the woman I had welcomed into my home, fed and talked to as my future daughter-in-law. David, my 17-year-old son, immediately stood up. "If you're not invited, I'm not going." Ellie burst into tears. Charles also declared that he would stay home. Each of my children, both common and separate, stood by me, except Adam. My husband, who had been sitting silently, finally looked straight at Adam and said, "Then Dad isn't going either." Adam looked straight at me and asked, "Are you going to let everyone ruin my wedding just because of you?" At that moment I laughed. A laugh without joy, without irony, just the only response that could escape from such great pain. A laugh, and I stood up, walked out of the house, sat in the car, and cried like I had never cried before. When my laughter rang out in that silent space, no one expected it to be the beginning of a storm. A simple laugh, which for me was the final explosion of suppressed emotions, became a knife that cut through the fragile bond of a family. And from that moment on, what seemed to have lasted for 2 decades, began to crack irreparably. We were a family. Not perfect but full of love. I am not Adam and Ben's biological mother, but I was there since they were little. I wiped away Adam's tears when he fell while learning to ride a bike. I stood outside the sports field every season to cheer for Ben even though he was just a bench player. I cooked every meal, cleaned every toy, drove them to school, to the doctor, to the injections. I did not give birth to them, but I loved them with all my heart. And now, the person I once held in my arms, comforted in my nightmares, looked at me like a stranger who didn't deserve to be present on his big day. After dinner that night, my house was wrapped in a thick layer of silence and loss. Charles was angry, David was confused, and Ellie was silent. My 13-year-old daughter, always the sweet bridge in the house, now just hid in her room, didn't turn on TikTok as usual, didn't say a word. I don't blame my children, I understand their disappointment. I even feel like I planted the seeds of this tragedy, because I laughed. Yes, I laughed as a way of defending myself, to keep from crying in the middle of my husband's birthday party, among my beloved children. The next day when I woke up, the house was strangely quiet. My husband had woken up early, sitting on the porch, his eyes looking far away. He was a calm person, rarely showing strong emotions. But today he couldn't hide his heartache. I didn't think Adam would do that, he said, his voice breaking. I didn't know how to respond. How could I explain that the person we had embraced and raised throughout our childhood now put a boundary between me and him with just a cold statement? She's not my mother. But it didn't stop there. 3 days later, Adam texted me. Not to apologize. Not to explain. But to ask me to apologize for laughing in his face and ruining the birthday party, ruining the family atmosphere. That text message was the end of the fragile trust one had left. I used to think that if I gave Adam time, he would realize his mistake, would remember the years I was with him, would understand that my feelings for him were not fake. But no. Adam chose Alice, and that was his right. But Adam also chose to turn his back on me as if I never existed. What hurt me most was the gossip from relatives. Messages like, "You're so petty, don't make it into a TV show, you're just a stepmother anyway, the wedding isn't about you, don't ruin someone else's." I read each line with tears streaming down my face. No one asked me what I'd been doing for the past 20 years. No one asked me how I felt about being left out of an important event because of a title that didn't belong to me. Charles was furious. "If you don't go, I won't go either," he said. I told him not to do that, that I was fine, that I didn't want to ruin Adam's wedding. But he said, "It's not a wedding, it's a fake stage." Same with David and Ellie. They wrote a long letter to Adam, recounting memories of having their mother in their lives. From picnics, to holding her when she was sick, to running in the rain to bring each of them clothes. But Adam read it and didn't reply. He had made his decision. A week later we received the wedding invitation. There was no name on it. No name on my husband. No name on it, 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 no name on it. I didn't know what kind of wedding Adam was planning, but it seemed like it was going to be a ceremony without family, or at least our family. The next few days were like a nightmare. I tried to act normal. I cooked, I went to work, I held my little girl every night as if everything was fine. But inside I was broken. There were nights when I couldn't sleep, just lying there staring at the ceiling and wondering, where did I go wrong? I had sacrificed my youth to be a wife, a mother, without legal papers, without a proper title. I loved children who were not my own blood like my own, but when it came to an important day in their lives, I was left out as if I were invisible. Then came the wedding day, a day that was supposed to be a happy day, but it became a deeper cut into my heart. I didn't go. My family didn't go. We stayed home, ate pizza and watched old movies. But no one really laughed. Ellie hugged her pillow, sobbing. Charles didn't say a word, just quietly took the wine even though he was underage. David played games, but his hands were shaking with anger. Me. I just sat there looking at the old wedding photos of me and my husband, where I had dreamed of a perfect home, where I believed that if I loved enough I would be accepted. After the wedding, Adam didn't contact me. But I knew he had started telling his story as a victim. That I was a selfish stepmother, that I laughed in my son's face, that I turned the whole family against his happiness. Those who didn't know me well, of course, would believe it. Those who had only known me through a few meetings, of course, would have a distorted view. And I have no right to speak up, because whatever I say will be considered playing the victim. But what is the truth? The truth is, I loved my husband's stepchild like I loved my own child. I taught him to tie his shoelaces, to read, to behave. I laughed with him, cried for him, sacrificed many things for him. And then he erased me with just one sentence. She is not my mother. So what am I? A temporary babysitter? A woman so blinded by love that she forgot that her role was temporary? Perhaps my laughter that day was the last scream of a broken heart. A laughter full of resentment, full of pain, full of regret. Because I knew after that moment my family would never be the same again. I sit here writing these lines not to ask for pity. Not to prove that I am completely right. Just to tell a story that I believe somewhere out there will be someone who has experienced the same thing. A mother who is not related by blood, but who once gave love as if she had given birth to that child. A woman who once believed that true feelings would be reciprocated, only to be pushed out of the family circle at the most important moment. When I told this story to a close friend, she was silent for a moment and then said, "Maybe the problem is not the laughter but the previous 20 years. I asked, "What do you mean?" And she sighed, "Maybe Adam never really saw you as a mother. You sacrificed a lot but you hoped too much. And when you expected him to invite you, you let yourself depend on the recognition of someone who had no obligation to acknowledge you." At that moment I felt my heart tighten. Not because my friend was wrong but because she was probably right. Had I ever built up a fantasy world where I was an indispensable part of my stepchild's life? Had I ever, the hugs, the thank yous, the smiles from Adam when he was a child, been purely polite, not a bond? Had I ever tried to see that fragile light to fight against the darkness of the truth, that I was always an outsider? I began to wonder, is non-blood love really recognized in this society? I had played the role of a stepmother. Not jealous of the children's biological mother. Not competing. I always give in, always stand behind, always try to make my children feel fulfilled. But is it because I always stand behind that I will never stand in line? Another person asked me, "Why were you so angry that you burst into laughter when you were removed from the wedding? You knew you were the stepmother." That question made me cry, not because they were wrong but because of its brutal honesty. Should I not expect anything? Should I stay silent, smile and congratulate even though I was excluded like a stranger? I don't know. I only know that the moment Adam said, "She is not my mother, she has no right to be at my wedding," my heart broke. Not because I was rejected but because I realized that 20 years of love, nurturing and education turned out to be worthless just because I wasn't my biological mother. Is that fair? Some people say I'm selfish. That adults should be tolerant and forgiving. But I ask again, who is the selfish one in this story? Me, the stepmother who silently worries about the happiness of each child? Or Adam, the grown son who chose to completely eliminate me just because of a biological definition? I don't want to make myself a victim, but I can't pretend that I'm okay either. Because I'm not okay. I cried a lot. I felt betrayed, cut off from the life I had helped build. I felt like everything I did was meaningless. But then one day my son David walked into the room and said, "Mom, don't be sad." I see. Sometimes you don't know the value of someone until they're gone. I held him in my arms and I knew that even though I lost one child, I still had 3 others who loved me like a mother. Truly a mother. I still haven't forgiven Adam. It may take a long time. Or maybe never. But I forgive myself. For loving, for sacrificing, and for feeling the pain of unrequited love. I choose to continue living not because I'm strong but because I'm worthy. Worthy of love. Worthy of recognition. And no matter how society sees me, I know I am a mother. Not because of the title but because my heart always belongs to the children I raised with love. Now let me pose some questions for you, the person watching this video, to think about and join in the discussion. 1. Was I wrong to laugh in front of Adam and everyone else? My laughter was a reflex, an explosion of pent-up emotions. But was it disrespectful, embarrassing my son at the party? 2. Did Adam have the right not to invite me to his wedding? He is an adult, the main character in his wedding. But I have raised him for 20 years. So do I deserve to be present? 3. Should a stepmother be considered an indispensable part of the family? If a woman has raised, cared for, and sacrificed for a child who is not her biological child, is she considered a mother, or just a temporary replacement? For family, is it blood or love and attachment? Are we judging a person's worth based on genes and bloodlines rather than merit and affection? 5. If you were me, how would you react? Stay silent and bless and not go? or speak up to defend yourself and cause a deeper rift? What would you do? 6. If you were Adam, would you invite your stepmother to the wedding? And if you chose not to invite, would you do it tactfully, or would you publicly deny her role as Adam did? 7. Should my father, my husband, speak up to defend his wife? Is he responsible for letting his stepchild exclude his wife from the wedding? 8. Are the community and relatives too harsh when they blame me for not being silent and tolerant? When I speak up, I am seen as playing the victim, but if I stay silent, I disappear completely. So what should I do? What do you think? Leave a comment below the video with hashtags like #ISupportStepmom, #AdamIsNotWrong, #FamiliesLove, #NotBloodNotMother, #JudgyTales. We will read and select the best comments to pin to the top of the page this week. And if you have ever been in a similar situation, tell us. Maybe your story will be the content of the next JudgyTales video. Thank you for listening. Thank you for not judging but choosing to reflect. Life is not black and white. There are truths that cannot be measured by reason but can only be felt by the heart. See you in the next stories, where truth, emotion, and judgment intersect.